Let me tell you something, and I want you to hear me real clear on this one. When a man starts distancing himself from you, when the calls slow down, the texts get dry, and suddenly he busy. Every day of the week, this ain't the time to panic. This ain't the time to start overthinking, interrogating, or turning into a private investigator. This is the moment where a woman either loses herself or upgrades herself. Let me explain this to you in a way that clears your head and calms your heart at the same time. When a man distances himself from you, that is not confusion, mystery, or some complicated emotional puzzle you need to solve. That is information. Pure, honest, unfiltered information. And the sooner you stop trying to reinterpret it into something softer, the sooner you regain control of yourself. Men communicate very clearly with their actions. They may struggle with words, but behavior never lies. If he wanted to be closer, he would be. If he wanted to talk, you wouldn't be guessing. If he wanted you present in his life, you wouldn't feel like you're slowly being removed from it. A man pulling away is not a test for you to pass. It's not an invitation for you to work harder, love louder, or prove your value. It's a signal telling you where he stands right now. And the mistake many women make is thinking they can love a man back into certainty. That's not how men operate. A man does not distance himself because he doesn't know how he feels. He distances himself because he knows exactly how he feels and is trying to avoid the conversation or responsibility that comes with it. Now listen carefully, because this part matters. Distance doesn't always mean he doesn't care at all, but it does mean you are not his priority in this moment. And anything that is not a priority will be postponed, neglected, and eventually forgotten if it stays that way. When you accept distance as information instead of rejection, you stop personalizing it. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, is this situation right for me? Men create space when they feel unsure, overwhelmed, distracted, or uninterested, but none of those reasons require you to chase them. Chasing does not clarify anything. It only teaches him that he can pull away and still keep access to you. And once a man learns that, he has no incentive to step up. You see, people respect what they have to work for, and they value what they can lose. Distance is his move. Your response is what determines the outcome. When you recognize his withdrawal as information, you stop filling in the silence with excuses for him. You stop making yourself responsible for his emotional state. You stop trying to decode every small action like it's a hidden message. There is no hidden message. The message is the distance. And the moment you accept that, you gain emotional clarity instead of emotional chaos. This is where strength shows up quietly. Strength is not arguing your way into importance. Strength is observing, accepting, and responding with self-respect. A woman who understands this does not panic when a man pulls away. She watches. She listens. She adjusts. She does not collapse her boundaries just to keep someone who is already halfway gone. Distance also gives you the gift of truth. It reveals how a man handles uncertainty, pressure, and responsibility. It shows you whether he leans in to communicate or leans out to escape. And that information is valuable because you don't want to build a future with someone who disappears when things get uncomfortable. So when a man distances himself, don't fight the truth. Don't chase clarity from someone who is choosing silence. Accept the information he's giving you, because understanding that one thing alone can save you from wasting time, energy, and love on someone who isn't ready to meet you where you stand. When a man distances himself and you feel that urge rise up in your chest to reach for your phone to send another message, to ask what's going on, that moment right there is where most women lose their power. Chasing feels natural because your heart wants reassurance, but attraction does not grow from desperation. It grows from curiosity, respect, and space. And the truth is, the more you chase a man who is pulling away, the more you confirm to him that he doesn't have to show up fully to keep you. Men are wired to pursue what they believe they might lose. When you chase, you remove all uncertainty. You answer questions he hasn't even asked yet. You show him that even if he does the bare minimum, you'll compensate by doing the most. And once that dynamic is set, it becomes very hard to reverse. A man will unconsciously relax when he knows you're not going anywhere, not because he feels secure, but because he feels unchallenged. Chasing also shifts the emotional balance in the relationship. Suddenly, you're the one explaining your feelings, justifying your needs, and trying to keep the connection alive. Meanwhile, he gets to sit back, respond whenever he feels like it, and decide how much effort he wants to give. That imbalance slowly drains your confidence. You start questioning your worth, rerating old messages, and wondering why someone who once seemed interested now feels distant. And all of that starts because you believed chasing would bring him closer. Here's the part nobody likes to hear, but it's the truth. A man who is truly interested does not need to be chased. He may get busy, distracted, or stressed, but he will not leave you in confusion for long. He will check in. He will explain. He will make sure you feel secure. When you chase a man who is distancing himself, you're not helping the connection. You're covering up the gap he created so he doesn't have to address it. Chasing also kills mystery. Mystery is what makes a man wonder, reflect, and feel the weight of your absence. When you constantly reach out, you remove that space where his thoughts could have grown. There's no room for him to miss you because you're always there, always available, always ready to explain yourself. And people rarely value what never leaves. The hardest part about not chasing is sitting with the discomfort. It feels unnatural at first because you're used to acting on emotion instead of principle, but restraint is powerful. Silence, when done with self-respect, is not weakness. It's confidence. It tells him you're not afraid of losing him because you're not afraid of being alone. And that energy shifts everything. When you stop chasing, two things happen. Either he steps up because he realizes the connection is fading without your effort, or he continues to drift away, revealing that he was never willing to meet you halfway. Both outcomes give you clarity. Chasing keeps you stuck in hope. Letting go of the chase gives you the truth. A woman who understands this doesn't beg for attention. She doesn't argue her way into importance. She knows that love cannot be forced and attraction cannot be negotiated. By choosing not to chase, she protects her dignity and allows the situation to reveal itself exactly as it is. When a man starts ignoring you, the silence can feel louder than any argument. Your mind fills in the gaps. Your emotions start racing, and every unanswered message feels personal. But here's the truth most people don't want to accept. Silence is a language, and if you learn how to listen to it instead of fighting it, you gain clarity instead of anxiety. A man who goes quiet is still communicating something. He's telling you what level of access he wants you to have to his time, his attention, and his energy. Men rarely use silence accidentally. When a man wants to talk to you, he finds a way. When he wants to explain himself, he explains. When he wants to keep a connection alive, he checks in, even if it's brief. Silence shows up when he's avoiding effort, avoiding responsibility, or avoiding emotional accountability. And none of those things require you to demand answers. The answers are already there if you're willing to accept them. Most women respond to being ignored by trying to break the silence. They send follow-up texts. They ask if everything is okay. They explain their feelings in long messages, hoping one of those words will finally reach him. But what often happens is the opposite. Silence mixed with pursuit teaches a man that he can withdraw and still remain in control of the situation. He learns that distance doesn't cost him anything because you'll bridge the gap for him. Understanding silence means recognizing when not to speak. It means knowing that your value does not increase because you explain yourself better. It increases when you show that you won't chase someone who chooses not to communicate. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it also reveals character. It shows whether a man respects you enough to clarify his intentions or whether he prefers to leave you guessing while he keeps his options open. When you stop reacting emotionally to being ignored, you reclaim your power. You stop centering your mood around his responses. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop allowing someone else's lack of effort to determine your self-worth. That shift is subtle, but it's strong. It changes the way you carry yourself and the way others treat you. Silence also creates space for reflection, not just for him, but for you. Instead of focusing on why he's not responding, you start paying attention to how his behavior makes you feel. You ask yourself whether this dynamic aligns with the kind of relationship you actually want. Peace doesn't come from constant communication. It comes from consistent respect. And being ignored is the opposite of respect. Some men return when they feel the absence of your energy. Others don't. And both outcomes are valuable. If he reaches out, it's often because he realized the silence cost him something. If he doesn't, it means the silence was never accidental in the first place. Either way, you gain clarity without sacrificing your dignity. The strongest response to being ignored is not anger, confrontation, or over-explaining. It's calm acceptance. It's understanding that you don't need to chase communication from someone who should want to give it freely. When you let silence speak instead of arguing with it, You stop fighting reality and start aligning with it. And that's where emotional strength begins, when you stop explaining yourself and start standing in your self-respect. Something powerful shifts, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. A lot of women believe that if they just say the right words, express their feelings clearly enough, or help a man understand where they're coming from, he'll suddenly step up. But the truth is, self-respect speaks louder than explanations ever could. A man already understands what effort looks like. He understands communication. He understands consistency. What he's deciding is whether he wants to offer those things to you. When a man distances himself, the instinct is to clarify, to defend your intentions, to make sure he doesn't misunderstand you. But over-explaining often comes from fear, not strength. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being replaced, fear of losing the connection. And when fear leads the conversation, respect quietly leaves the room. A man doesn't feel inspired by someone trying to convince him of their worth. He feels it when someone knows it without having to say a word. Self-respect shows up in what you tolerate. It shows up when you don't accept inconsistent communication. It shows up when you don't shrink your needs to make someone else comfortable. And it definitely shows up when you don't beg someone to treat you right. When you stop explaining, you're not being cold or distant, you're being clear. You're saying, I don't need to justify my standards. I live by them. Men pay attention to boundaries more than speeches. You can explain how much silence hurts you 100 times, but if you keep staying, he learns that silence has no consequences. When you respond to distance with dignity instead of desperation, you teach him how to treat you. Either he rises to meet that standard or he removes himself because he can't. Both outcomes protect you. There's a quiet confidence in a woman who doesn't argue for attention. She doesn't chase clarity. She doesn't negotiate basic respect. She understands that love isn't built through convincing someone to care. It's built when care is mutual, and when a man senses that you're willing to walk away rather than over-explain, he feels the weight of that decision. Self-respect also shifts your internal dialogue. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop wondering what else you could have said. You stop blaming yourself for someone else's emotional distance. Instead, you start trusting what you feel. If something feels off, it probably is. And you don't need permission to honor that feeling. When you move with self-respect, you don't rush to fill silence. You let it exist. You allow people to reveal themselves through their actions. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, because someone who truly values you won't be confused by your boundaries. They won't be threatened by your standards. They won't disappear when things require effort. A man who wants to be in your life will meet you halfway without needing a long explanation. He'll ask questions. He'll communicate. He'll make adjustments. And if he doesn't, your self-respect keeps you from settling for less than what you deserve. You don't need to convince someone to choose you. The right person already knows why you're worth choosing. When a man distances himself, most women believe the solution is to close the gap as fast as possible. They think if they stay present, stay kind, stay understanding, he'll eventually come back around. But men don't reconnect because you stayed available. They reconnect when they feel the absence of what they took for granted. A man doesn't reflect while he's comfortable. Reflection happens in the quiet moments when he notices something is missing. Absence is not punishment. It's not manipulation. It's simply the natural consequence of someone choosing not to show up. When you remove yourself emotionally and mentally from someone who is pulling away, you give him space to feel the difference between having you and not having you. Constant access numbs appreciation. Distance sharpens it. Men often don't realize the value of a woman until her energy is no longer readily available. When you stop initiating, stop checking in, and stop trying to maintain the connection alone, you create a vacuum. And in that vacuum, a man has to face his own behavior. Either he steps up because he recognizes what he's losing, or he continues to drift because he was never invested enough to begin with. Both outcomes tell you everything you need to know. The mistake many women make is believing that absence means being cold, angry, or dramatic. That's not it. Absence is quiet. It's calm. It's you focusing on your life, your peace, and your purpose without announcing it. You don't post indirect messages. You don't try to make him jealous. You simply redirect your energy back to yourself. That kind of absence is powerful because it's rooted in self-respect, not revenge. When a man senses that you are no longer waiting around for his attention, it shifts the dynamic. He can no longer assume you'll always be there no matter how little effort he gives. And that realization can be uncomfortable. Men don't like losing access to something that made them feel good. But access is a privilege, not a guarantee. When you stop offering it freely, he has to decide whether he's willing to earn it again. Absence also protects your emotional health. Instead of living in a constant state of anticipation, you regain your sense of balance. You stop checking your phone. You stop overanalyzing every interaction. You stop tying your mood to whether or not he reaches out. That peace is not small, it's life-changing. And once you experience it, you realize how draining it was to give so much to someone who was giving so little. Some men come back when they feel the absence. Others don't. But the goal is not to make him return. The goal is to return to yourself. Because when you prioritize your well-being, you raise the standard for how others must treat you to remain in your life. Absence teaches you who values you without constant reminders. It reveals who is capable of effort when it's no longer convenient, and it frees you from the illusion that love is something you have to chase or maintain alone. The right man will feel your absence and choose you. The wrong one will fade, and in doing so, make space for someone who doesn't need distance to realize your worth. A woman has to understand this one truth. If she wants peace in her life, your value was never created by a man's attention, and it will never disappear because he stopped giving it. Too many women measure their worth by how often a man calls, texts, or shows up. And that's a dangerous place to live emotionally, because the moment his attention changes, your confidence starts shaking, And no man should ever have that much control over how you see yourself. A man's attention is a choice, not a reward you earn by being good enough. When he gives it, it doesn't mean you suddenly became valuable. And when he withholds it, it doesn't mean you lost value. It only means he made a decision about where he wants to place his focus. Confusing attention with worth is how women start shrinking themselves, tolerating disrespect, and accepting inconsistency just to feel chosen. Here's what happens when you tie your value to his attention. You start accepting less than you deserve. You excuse behavior you would normally walk away from. You wait longer than you should. You explain things you shouldn't have to explain. And all of it comes from the fear that if he stops choosing you, you somehow become less. That fear keeps women stuck in situations that drain them. A confident woman understands that attention is optional, respect is not. Love is optional, effort is not. If a man's interest is the only thing making you feel worthy, then you've given him a position he never earned. Because real value comes from knowing who you are, what you bring, and what you will no longer tolerate. That kind of value doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's behavior. When a man distances himself and you start feeling anxious, that's your cue to check in with yourself, not chase him. Ask yourself why his absence feels like a threat instead of a filter. Because distance doesn't reduce your value, it reveals who was never aligned with it. A man who truly values you won't make you feel invisible. He won't make you question your place. He won't make his attention feel like a reward you have to work for. Men can sense when a woman's confidence depends on them, and whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, that imbalance changes how they treat her. When a man knows you need his attention to feel okay, he holds the power. But when he knows you're okay with or without him, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer auditioning for his approval. You're evaluating whether he fits into your life. Your value is in your standards. It's in your boundaries. It's in your ability to walk away from what doesn't serve you. It's in the way you love deeply but refuse to beg. It's in choosing peace over chaos and self, respect over attachment. That value existed before he showed up, and it will exist long after he's gone if that's how it ends. When you stop measuring yourself by a man's attention, you stop chasing validation. You stop competing with other women. You stop proving, explaining, and over-giving. You start moving differently. You speak differently. You expect differently. And people respond to that energy because it's grounded, not desperate. A man may come or go, but your relationship with yourself is permanent. And the moment you truly understand that, a man's distance won't shake you. It won't make you question who you are. It won't make you beg for clarity or reassurance. Because you already know your worth and you don't need anyone else to confirm it for you.